Hi, it's Skiff and Low Baits here, and today's question that I'm going to answer is, what is a pre-mine in the blockchain space? And the answer there is very simple. A pre-mine is when a cryptocurrency or a token is created in quantity at the start of the existence of that token or cryptocurrency. Now that sounds a little bit more complicated than it should. Let's look at the case where there is not a pre-mine for a token or a cryptocurrency. In that situation, you're looking at the cryptocurrency or the token being generated over time. And the classic example of this is Bitcoin. When Satoshi Nakamoto launched the Bitcoin chain, at the point that it was created, there were no spendable coins. Actually, some people will argue, well, he or she started the chain by issuing the first block, the Genesis block, and that gave them 50 Bitcoin, to which I can counter, but due to a technicality, those first 50 Bitcoin can never be spent. So it is indeed absolutely true that at its creation point, there were no spendable Bitcoin available for anybody. And then Bitcoins were generated over time, roughly 50 every 10 minutes for the first 220 or so thousand or so blocks. And they were awarded to people who were running miners. Now again, in the early days, the only person running miners was Satoshi Nakamoto, so they did have a head start. But the fact remains that if you saw all the announcements about Bitcoin, read the paper, were convinced, and decided to dedicate your computer to some Bitcoin mining, then you would have got some of that early stuff. It wasn't allocated specifically to Satoshi Nakamoto and friends in the early days. This contrasts with Ethereum, which, although also a cryptocurrency, see my previous videos on what constitutes a cryptocurrency, the fact is that when Ethereum was launched, a whole bunch of it was initially created on the launch of the chain and distributed among the people who engineered that cryptocurrency to begin with. So people like Vitalik Buterin got a hefty amount of ether at the very start of the launch of the chain. They didn't have to run miners to get it, and that means that they had a pre-mine, and you can go and look up the exact numbers as to how much ether was created by them. I don't know it off the top of my head, but so looking at Bitcoin and at ether, you can see there that Bitcoin did not have a pre-mine, whereas ether did. And we can see the same with tokens. When a token is issued, sometimes, usually in fact, the creators of the token allocate a chunk for themselves and their group and their treasury and their investors and stuff like that. And then a bunch is put out on the open market or created over time for other people to obtain it as they participate in that token ecosystem. As to how that works, well, it varies from one token to another. And there's a whole industry out there now called tokenomics, which is the study and implementation of mechanisms whereby supplies of tokens are created, allocated, and in some cases destroyed. I'll wrap it up here though. I think that's been enough on what is a pre-mine. Hope that's answered the question satisfactorily for you, and I'll see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.